I have seen so many people, so many times, push themselves in places that they are less excited about, less passionate about, because they're so afraid of touching the thing that they are passionate about, or they're so anxious about that, or they feel this lack of confidence in that, or they feel like they can see all the ways other people are better in that. So they'll find these like sub passions that sort of give them that feeling that they're doing something valuable that maybe is in a niche that not everyone else is in, and doesn't make them have to deal with the anxiety of what it is to push themselves in something they are less confident and less comfortable in. Hello and welcome to Stray Kids Megaverse YouTube edition, wherein the therapist who autistically runs on spite, confusion, and the deep need to info dump about their special interests does that last part. My intros haven't gotten better, and I don't plan on making them do so. So cool. Hi, I'm Lullaby, per usual. If you haven't seen any of the other episodes of this series of Therapists React, I recommend doing that first. Honestly, I don't know what's coming up exactly in this video, but what I do know is that in my last several, I tend to reference the previous ones quite a bit because I don't want to, like, re-go into a whole bunch of stuff that I've already gone into, like, 7 different times. And that just seems to be a progressively worse problem. Today, unlike the last couple times, I have given myself an indefinite period of time to record, or, well, realistically, like 2 hours. But I did not love my Hyunsung reaction because I felt rushed, which is wildly ironic considering that it was an hour and a half long, but so be it. I felt rushed, and I don't love that for me. So I'm giving myself plenty of time this time around, and I'm going to see how that works. Right. So usually I give content updates at the end of the video, but I'm not going to do that this time because everybody keeps asking me the same question. So I'm going to answer it and hopefully then be done answering it, even though I know that that is not how the internet works. Yes, I have watched the Chan and Seungmin 2kidsroom already. I watched Chanming and Jilix before I decided to do this. I will still react to them. I'm just going to do it at the end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself the context of everything else we're learning from the other 2kidsrooms and then go back to those two later. I think that that will be the more interesting direction to take this from than to just like I'm really not somebody who's good at pretending to react to something to for the first time, right? Like, it's not really my vibe. So I'm not gonna do that. So I will go back and watch them at the end. Other content updates. Yeah, so supposedly I'm a podcast host. I recognize that I have not released an episode of a podcast in a minute. I had a total and complete crash out about trying to finish this episode of this podcast because somehow my delve into the Han Alien trilogy resulted in, like, a fundamental question about the ontology of what it is to be human, which is what it is now. But point is, I'm finally almost done with that script, so there will be a new episode of a podcast soon. That's exciting. It will be part 3 of our Neuroplatonic Neurodivergence series. That will be super cool. For those of you who haven't listened to my podcast, I have a podcast. It's very academic. That's fine. I've been slowly getting it on YouTube. Other content updates is that I'm doing this still. It's Jilix weekend. Now, it won't be Jilix weekend for you any longer after this because it's Jilix weekend for me. But what's great about the internet existing in perpetuity is that if I don't say which Jilix weekend it is, you could just choose to watch this in a year. And it'll be relevant. So, yeah. Anyway, point is, I threatened to fight Skijiki if they did not release Jilix 2kidsroom on Jilix weekend. So luckily I don't have to do that because I don't think I'd win. Let's just, regardless of all other practical issues, I don't think I'd win in a fight against Skijiki. So luckily I don't have to do that. But I did update my art wall. There's all kinds of fun things back here that mostly you can't see because I'm recording this at night and I don't have good lighting for this. Or I have great lighting for it. I have very aesthetic lighting for it. I don't have great lighting for seeing the fun Jilix art wall with lots of little Easter eggs and metaphors and symbolism and vibes. Jilix vibes. I get to enjoy it at least. And knowing me, it won't have changed by the next time I record one of these. I have a dream to update my wall more frequently as October rolls in, since October is, Gay Pride, the Reckoning month, and I intend to celebrate the traditions of my people and become increasingly spooky as we go further into spooky season. But let's be honest here. I don't have a lot of hope in my ability to do this. Updating this wall took a lot of effort, especially with these nails. Point is, it's Jilix weekend, and it might be on my art wall, Jilix weekend. Well, I was going to say until Seungmin's birthday, but that's next week. So it might end up being Jilix and Seungmin for a while until it's Chan's birthday. I don't know. I'm not committing to anything. Yeah, that's my content updates. At the end, I'm going to talk about how nice your comments are, because I've had a lot of feelings about that, but I've already gone on too long about useless endeavors. So with that, I'm going to watch my silly boys be silly with each other and talk about things. I don't know much about what happens in this episode. I do know something about a Minsung crash out that I probably have opinions about. Yeah.
야, 이런 여기 놀 때마다 정말 추억이 돋는 걸? 이거가
Number one memory room.
케이콘인가 갔었을 때 찍은 거 같고. 왜 여기는 내가 용복이를 죽이려고 하고 있지? 옛날에 이거 손을 잡고 있네?
버스킹 하러 갔을 때 하기 전에 그때 긴장해가지고 손잡고 우리 진짜 애기였구나.
I love that Felix remembers what's going on.
이거? 쟤랑 나랑 같이 언제 누웠지?
맞아, 이 영상.
이게 뭐야? 나 로맨틱네, 되게.
Was it? Oh.
귀엽습니다.
일단 트루맨이 제일 기억에는 많이 나왔던 것 같아. 정말.
I love the, what is it like to look back, and Han goes, I'm looking, not remembering, but I am. looking. Oh, he does not have the strongest event recollect, does he? There's a few types of recollect that he is not the strongest at. There are multiple kinds of recollect. Gosh, can I remember them off the top of my head? This is a piece of neuroscience that I know, but I don't think I can just rattle it off. I know one of them is episodic, and that's like I believe that's the memory one. Yeah. I don't have this neuroscience off the top of my head, but it is very interesting if you ever want to take a look at like different types of amnesia or different types of memory storage. There's I think four different types of memory, and I think that there's some interesting research, if I recall correctly, around how music and language is stored, wherein, like, I think the storage bucket of it changes at a certain, like, point of expertise. It's worth looking into. If this were a podcast, I would look it up and tell you all the information in a very interesting way. It's not, I don't remember off the top of my head.
재밌게 그리고 신기하게 이런 음악도 만들고 많은 의미가 담겨진 것 같아요.
요즘 민호 형 다음으로 아마 릭스한테 제일 말을 많이 하는 것 같은데 개인적으로.
Oh, that's super interesting. Okay, that is interesting. I mean, I do maintain that I don't fall for the propaganda that they've never hung out with each other. I'm glad I was right about not falling for that propaganda. But I recently rewatched a lot of the kids' rooms with Han because I've been working on this episode of this podcast. And I've watched a lot of them, so I don't fully 100% remember which one with Felix he said what in, but if I recall correctly, he and Felix in the, like, prior 2kids rooms were not that close. I know that I think in the first or second one they did together, so I'm thinking, I don't remember if it was from 2019 or 2020, but within that cohort. They talked a lot about, like, basically barely knowing each other, that they were both, like, really interested in knowing more about each other, but, like, really just didn't super know how to connect. Or maybe that was in the second one. I don't fully remember which set of conversations was in which. But I do know that, like, it was pretty clear that, you know, in the 2022 ones even, they were not, like, of the members who were super close with each other, they were not two of them. So it's really interesting that, and it goes to show as well the way that time changes things. You know, I want to say in my most recent podcast episode, I put down a theory about the way that we think about time with these boys, and that for K-pop artists, especially with K-pop artists with so much content over such a long period of time, there's sort of on a parasocial level, a Schrodinger's age perspective in which at all times to us, they are kind of every single age because we experience the content much faster. Like if we're looking in retrospect, if we're rewatching content, or if we're, you know, we haven't been with them since debut or things like that, we're experiencing content in a much more condensed time, sometimes by, you know, a huge amount, more condensed time, right? Then they actually lived it, or that it actually happened. What this means is that it's very, very easy for us as the entertained, I'll say, as watchers, as listeners, as the consumer, right? We are essentially the consumer of a parasocial relationship. Oh, hey, there's like melted chocolate on my mug. Somewhere on this table, there's like a chocolate chip or something. Where? There's not a chocolate chip here. Why is there melted chocolate on my mug? Oh my gosh, it's like all over my dress. It must have been like downstairs. How long have I had melted chocolate? Oh, sorry, this is not the crush that I expected to have at this moment. It's on my phone. Okay. Well, this is an experience I'm having. That's fine. What was I saying? We are a consumer of a parasocial relationship. There's paper towels over here. We are the consumer of a parasocial relationship, and as that consumer, we can sort of take them and experience them at all of these various different ages with a huge amount of content all of the time. And it's very easy for us to forget that they are growing and changing as people. So I'll see this quite frequently where people will take things that they said 2-3 years ago and use it as a matter of fact for what they believe or would say now. Now, we can know that, something is more likely to, if somebody said something 3 years ago, it's certainly possible that it's still the case, but it's also very, very possible that it's not. So, if I were still working off of past 2kidsrooms, if I let myself be sort of taken in a week ago before this episode came out, and I had just been looking at 2kidsrooms, or let's say a couple months ago, when that Japanese game thing was one of the Hollow promotionals, came out where Felix and Han said that they have never hung out one-on-one. And I wrote my shit post that was, I won't fall for that propaganda, but I would fall for the propaganda that they're both just so ADHD they've forgotten every time they've hung out one-on-one. Which I maintain. But let's say I was just working off of past 2kidsrooms or things like that. I might be willing to believe that they don't hang out one-on-one. Because based on what they were saying in 2022, which was 3 years ago, or based on what they were saying in 2020, which was even longer ago, maybe they wouldn't be. But clearly relationships change. And I think especially in a group this big, you're going to have different seasons for different relationships. And those seasons might be 2 years long, it might be 3 months long, but you can't really invest deeply into this number of relationships all at the same time, especially when you live a very, very busy life. So different relationships are going to have different seasons. And it may have just been that it took longer for these two to have their season, right? And I kind of wonder if what they're going to say next, I sort of wondered this before, is if part of the reason they joined together, they did a collab for Truman, was because they hadn't really had as much of that season yet. And they wanted it.
자기 세계가 제일 강한 사람. 약간 살짝.
귀여워 쿼커 같아요. 장난스럽고 그리고 밝고.
His own
같아요. 장난스럽고.
자기 세계가 제일 강한 사람. 약간
personal world, kind of in his own world. This is like another one of those things where I want somebody who speaks the language better. Oh my gosh, somebody commented on my last on the Hyunsung video with a clarification on one of the translation things that I was really confused about. It was such a helpful comment. Oh my gosh, I don't remember off the top of my head what it was, but like it's in there. It was really, really helpful. It really cleared things up. I'm not sure if he's saying that Felix like gets lost in his own world the most, which would be a little bit surprising to me considering like Han and Hyunjin, or like what he means by strongest personal world, kind of in his own world. Like I'm having a hard time figuring out if he's saying that it's like inside his head, or if it's that like Felix has a complex world of a life and like has a very individual like world, or what exactly he means here.
귀여워 쿼커 같아요. 장난스럽고 그리고 밝고 약간 좀 여린 마음도 있고 에너지 넘치는 쿼커라고 생각해. 그리고 또 리스펙하는 아티스트라고 생각해.
자, 그럼 우리 용복 씨랑 얘기를 해보도록 할까요? 뭐야?
Han, yeah, sometimes you just say shit, don't you?
그대를 만나고 그대의 머릿결을 만질 수
Oh my gosh, Han, stop making me feel like you're really ADHD coded. What are you doing? How's your dopamine, baby? How's your dopamine doing? Oh, God. How's your dopamine, Felix? How's everyone's dopamine today?
인터뷰 갑자기.
스트레이키즈 필릭스 씨?
예, 안녕하십니까.
저는 JYP 일부에서 나온 한지성 기자라고 합니다.
예,
용복 씨가 맞죠?
예 맞습니다.
내 마음을 훔쳐간 범인이 용복 씨가 맞잖아요.
맞죠?
잘 지냈니?
잘 지냈지.
I'm going to start client conversations this way. This is how I'm going to meet with clients where they're at. This is how I'm going to just like start random conversations from here on out. Clients, you know what, friends? D&D sessions. It's going to be all of them. Why the fuck not?
마지막으로 본 게 어디지?
5 minutes ago.
나 어제야.
아니 그 스케줄 외에 스케줄만 우리 많이 보는 것 같아.
It was yesterday.
둘이
진짜
데이트한 적은
신기하게
없어.
같이 살지 않은 사람 아니면 잘 안 먹는 것 같아.
맞아.
솔직히 너는 리노 형이랑 많이 먹어.
So Han's saying that he's recently spent the most time with Felix. Felix is saying that they never really go. Are they just like not counting hanging out at home as spending time together? Like, what is, are they only qualifying quality time if you're like going on an adventure? Do you know how many friends I have never gone on an adventure with? Like, I've got an entire, like, affectionate situationship where, like, we've gone out for drinks one-on-one, like, twice. I just go over to his house. We just hang out at his house. What the fuck are you two talking about? Because that's what he said, right? Is that, like, I didn't just, like, exhausted make this up that he said that?
귀엽습니다. 일단 트루맨이 제 기억에도 많이 나왔던 것 같아요. 정말 재밌게 그리고 신기하게 이런 음악도 만들고 많은 의미가 담겨진 것 같아요.
요즘 민우 형 다음으로 아마 릭스한테 제일 말을 많이 하는 것 같은데 개인적으로 나는.
I probably talk the most with Felix.
이게 어디지?
근데 웃기면 난 기억이 안 나.
나 어제야.
아니 그 스케줄 외에 스케줄만 우리 많이 보는 것 같아.
둘이 데이트한
What? I feel like I'm being gaslit. They're gaslighting. They're not gaslighting me. Hold on. Wait. I need to asterisk this now that I've made the joke, but I recognize in retrospect that this is a joke that people don't always realize. So gaslighting is a very, very specific type of abuse. It's a very specific type of emotional abuse. That is intentionally making somebody question their own reality. So it's like for the purpose of manipulation. Sometimes you talk to somebody who's got some really questionable episodic memory. And you vaguely feel gaslit because you're like, that's not what happened. And they fully believe that's what happened. And that's just because their memory is shit. But I feel fucked with right now. I feel fucked with.
신기하게 같이 살지 않은 사람 아니면 잘 안 먹는 것 같아. 솔직히 너는 리노 형이랑 많이 먹었지.
나는 거의 숙소에서 민우 형 있어도 거의 혼자 먹어.
아 그래?
나는 방에 들어가서 먹고 형도 방에 들어가서 먹어.
아 그래?
난 그래서 우리 부엌에 굳이 책상이 필요 없어.
Is this what people were crashing out about the Minsung thing?
한 잔도 안 해? 진짜?
왜 내가 한잔 잘 안 하니까.
신기하네. 난 진짜 처음 알아본 상황이야.
숙소에서 민우 형 있어.
This is an absurd thing for people to crash out about.
잘 안 먹는 것 같아. 솔직히 너는 리노 형이랑 많이 먹었지.
나는 거의 숙소에서 민우 형 있어도 거의 혼자 먹어.
아 그래?
Yeah.
나는 방에 들어가서
That makes sense.
형도 방에 들어가서 먹어.
That makes a lot of sense.
그래?
난 그래서
Yeah.
우리 부엌에 굳이 책상이 필요 없어. 근데 일단 너무
Yeah.
험해 보여서 일단 두긴 했는데
한 잔도 안 해?
Yeah, no, Felix is just like an extrovert. Like this is what, and the Jilix thing, I talked through this a little bit, is like, you know, Seungmin's willingness to meet Felix's social needs and potentially get some of his own met. If this is what people are crashing out over, this is a very unnecessary crash out, y'all. And I think it is because I saw somebody say on Threads, like, people keep saying, like, have you never seen a healthy, especially like neurodivergent relationship? And they were like, no, I haven't. So this makes a lot of sense. And I'm going to be straight up here. So my gothic enigma, my nesting partner, we eat, like, we're home, right? Except like during the day when she's at work, and I work from home. Like, we're home mostly at the same times. We eat, I don't know, maybe 2 meals a week together. Like, she wakes up earlier than me. We get hungry at different times. We eat in different spaces. We don't own a dining room table. I mean, we own a coffee table that converts into a dining room table. and it's usually taken up by my weird craft supplies. That's really normal. It's super typical. You know, yes, there are some people who really need to like who really bond through eating together. And yes, obviously, like within this culture, like food is a really important thing, but that doesn't mean, like, if you're really, what that means is that the more comfortable you feel with someone, what that tells me, actually, like, so if you're in a culture where food is really, really important as a social bonding thing, and food is really important to humans as a social bonding thing, this is like a probably like an Evo Psych type thing, but, you know, in some cultures, it is like really, really pivotal. And a lot of times you can even sort of pinpoint those cultures from some of the language. So, that's a different tangent. Korean is one of them, though. But if you're not eating meals together, in some ways that tells me that you found someone who you feel very, very comfortable unmasking with. I shouldn't use the term unmasking because it does imply like a diagnostic of some kind, but it means you've found somebody who you feel really comfortable engaging with your environment in the way you need to, because you don't feel obligated to engage in this social construct with them. I would say that, like, Han and Lino living together, having their own separate spaces, when they are home, usually eating in those own separate spaces, probably actually indicates, like, yes, it could obviously indicate unease, I suppose. That just doesn't seem the most likely option here. I would guess it probably indicates, like, deep safety and deep trust and a deep willingness to believe that you will get your social needs from this person met through the ways you need to, which are not necessarily the normative ways, right? My Enigma and I, we don't eat food together, but we will do other things together, right? Like, we just hang out at different times. We have different ways we bond. And I don't even think this is necessarily like a neurodivergence thing. You know, I think that both of them have the type of energy where they do need time alone, space apart, time to themselves. Yeah, I don't know. This just seems really normal to me. And this is also something where, like, being polyamorous and knowing a lot of polyamorous people, like, who are in really deep, committed, meaningful relationships, whether they're queer platonic relationships or not, but, like, clearly not eating most meals together. You know, maybe that's also part of, like, what I'm saying. I don't see this as I don't see this as crash out worthy. I mean, Felix is crashing out, but that's just because Felix.
신기하다. 난 진짜 처음 알아본 상황이다.
그게 잘 맞아. 내 공간과 내 시간이 무조건 필요한 사람들이야.
MBTI가.
Yeah, Felix also. So Felix. This is total should I say something that's total speculation? I don't always feel good about going into total speculation. I'll put down some of the dots that I'm connecting, and if you connect them, great, and if you don't, it's information. Felix has sort of mentioned that he has a hard time, like, fully understanding from just, like, the get-go, like putting his own experiences and emotions into words and fully like grasping what somebody else is going through, like before they talk him through it. And he's talked about this with like when he's talked about writing like Deep End or Unfair, that use of media to, you know, really imagine what would it be like to be in that situation. So it was Bridge to Terabithia with Deep End. It was Beauty and the Beast with Unfair. Very common for certain neurotypes who struggle with social connection and sometimes struggle with a sense of empathy in the actual definition of the word. We really misuse the word empathy. A lot of times people take it to mean compassion, which it's not. Empathy is the literal feeling of what somebody else is feeling in a situation, which means that one, not as helpful by itself as one would think it is, because it does not necessarily come with critical thinking skills. So a lot of times people who will experience a sense of empathy, but they don't know what to do about it. Two, a lot of people, what they will have is they'll have empathy for themselves in the other person's situation. I always say that, like, I don't like the metaphor of walk a mile in someone else's shoes, because it's really more about walking a mile with someone else's feet. And so what will happen is people will experience empathy for what they personally would feel in your situation, not what you are feeling right now. So empathy is like a very, very specific thing that does not in any way, shape, or form imply somebody's compassion or somebody's sympathy for somebody else, somebody's ability to do kindness. You know, one of my dearest loves, like, basically has no sense of empathy. I love them. They're deeply compassionate. They really don't want their friends in pain, and it's impossible to trauma dump on them. Just impossible. They're not going to feel any of it. They just want to help you out because they don't want their friends to be suffering. So, you know, I'm not surprised that, like, Felix is sitting here shocked because, you know, I don't know that he always is thinking through somebody else's experience until they're explaining it to him, right? Like, he's maybe just sort of assumed that the way his world has worked is the way that his friends' worlds are working. And now he's being given this perspective that's very bizarre to him, and contextualizing it into like, oh yes, right, you are a different person.
처음 알아본 상황이다.
그게 잘 맞아. 내 공간과 내 시간이 무조건 필요한 사람들이야.
MBTI가 I.
Shut the fuck up about MBTI. Whatever. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
S, G, T에서 F로.
Yeah, of course it switched.
너 한참 그때
It's because everything...
애들이 있어. 너 무조건
Whatever.
근데 우리 공통
None of it's real.
좀 있는 것 같아. 우리 만화 좋아하지.
만화 좋아하지.
그래서 만화 뭐 그런 카페 있잖아. 그런 데서 가면 난 좋다고 생각하고. 뭐 영화 보는 것도 난 좋아해. 한식, 중식, 일식 난 다 좋아해.
How did they get onto food?
카페 가면 되지.
What are they talking about? God damn. Ricochet-ass conversations. They're talking about hobbies they both like?
근데 우리
Common interests.
되게 좀
Okay.
있는 것 같아. 우리 만화 좋아하지.
만화 좋아하지.
그래서 만화 뭐 그런 카페
They're just
있잖아.
hitting
그런
every
데서
interest,
뭐
regardless.
영화 보는 것도 난 좋아해. 한식, 중식, 일식
난 다 좋아해.
그러면 뷔페 가면 되지.
But will you? Or are you both?
이제 뭔가 친구들이랑 오후에 해 떠 있을 때 만나서 저녁까지 놀잖아.
근데 너의 노는 그 기준이 뭐야? 야 이게 노는 거구나라는 생각, 그러니까 하는 방식이
보통 수다를 많이 떨어.
그러면-
아니면 노래방을 가거나.
아 그치 노래방 맞네.
노래방 진짜 좋아.
What is your definition for hanging out? How many times? I'm going to need to make myself a physical embraceautism.com banner because I'm fucking sick of this shit. I'm sick of editing in a banner every episode. What is your definition of hanging out, bruh? Oh, this is hanging out? I bet these two motherfuckers have engaged in so much parallel play in the same place and just simply have never contemplated that as hanging out. It's never occurred to them, like, oh, we're in the same place doing similar things, but we're being quiet by ourselves and like occasionally bringing something up and it feels like bonding and connective. That's great. We hung out. What counts as hanging out? If you're chatting enough, I've sat there and just done puzzles quietly with people. I'm also curious. This makes me really, really curious about who in their relationships tends to make plans, because Felix just like went through all of these options of possible plans and they were like, yeah, all of those sound good. What counts as hanging out? And now we're coming up with a bunch of other options, and sometimes, a lot of times, there are people who are very good at thinking about making plans. And these are two people who are very good at having an imagination. And I'm curious if they're as good about implementing social logistics. I'm really curious, you know, in their relationships, who tends to be like, hey, let's do something. We're making a plan. We're calendaring it out. Because maybe that's their problem with hanging out. I don't know.
나는 옛날에 데뷔 초반에 뭐 쉬는 날이나 그런 거 혼자 이제 노래방 가고 그랬으니까 코인 노래방도 많이 해봤고.
약간 우리의 노는 기준이 좀 또 다른 것 같아. 그러니까 나는 피방을 좋아해.
PC방
시켜서 먹으면서 게임하고 뭐.
약간 근데 사람이 적어야 돼. 그러니까 나는 진짜 친한 사람들을 한 두세 명씩 만나가지고, 그러니까 진짜 별 내용 없는 것들 있잖아. 진짜 뻘소리들. 근데 같이 있으면 또 재밌잖아. 아무래도 둘이 붙어 있으면은
귀엽죠.
귀엽다. 당연히 귀여운 애 두 명이 있는데 안 귀여울 수가 없어.
안 귀여울 수가 없어. 진짜 뭐 하든 팬들이 항상 귀엽게 많이 봐주는 것 같고 생각보다 밝아.
그렇지.
No matter what we do. Because Felix has been begging people to sexualize him for years. No matter what I do, they just see me as cute.
진짜 생각보다 장난 많이 치고 생각보다 많이 밝아서. 근데 너랑 상민이 형이 제일 귀여운 것 같아, 나는. 봤을 때. 우리의 귀여움. 근데 정확히 말하기엔 좀 애매한데. 예를 들면 최근에 람미에서 우리 라이브를 했을 때 다시 모니터링 했는데, 근데 너가 해주는 행동이랑 나를 케어해주려고 하는 그 모습이 너무 에너지가 넘치니까 고맙고 귀여웠어. 그러니까 동갑이고 그냥 친구들끼리인데 그래도 형처럼 하는 그런 대해주는 그런 모습이 보니까
내가 너보다 하루 형이니까.
근데 뭔가 내 생각에는 진짜
나는 콕하고 너는 병아리잖아.
응, 그치.
둘 다 작은 동물이잖아.
작은 동물.
팬들이 스테이가 봤을 때는 작은 동물끼리 막 붙어있고 막 꽁냥꽁냥 대고 뭐 얘기하고 깔깔깔고 그런 모습이 되게 귀여워해 주시는 것 같아.
맞아.
귀여워해 주시는
맞아.
것 같아.
맞아. 진짜
고마워.
그런 게 팬들이 너무 귀엽게 봐주니까 너무 고맙지.
릭스가 어른스럽다라고 생각은 요즘 많이 하긴 하지만 형이라는 생각은 잘 안 드네요. 저 또한 그냥 장난으로 그렇게 말하는 거지 제가 좀 더 형 같다는 생각도 안 하고 친구죠.
근데 툴만 하면서 너가 어쨌든 곡도 많이 쓰고 하잖아. 내가 봤을 때 100개 넘게 썼을걸?
옛날 정말 못 쓰는 것까지 합하면
와, 진짜 그게 대단해. 너가 나한테 말했던 게 있었는데.
At what point do you stop counting like, did a song that count 2 years ago to you, but you don't like it anymore, still count? Does I have concerns about your perfectionism, Han.
네, 너가 진짜 할 수 있어 이런 자신감을 준 거야. 너가 그만큼 어쨌든 곡을 많이 쓴 만큼 콘텐츠나 아니면 뮤비에서든 아니면 무대에서든 아티스트스러운 모습을 보여주잖아. 근데 좀 더 그거를 많이 더 보여줬으면 좋겠다라는 생각이 들어.
릭스의 랩에 대한 건 원래 예전부터 너무 잘한다는 건 너무 알고 있었으니까 오히려 이제 목소리 아니면 귀공자 같은 비주얼이라든가 그에 비해서는 랩 스킬에 대한 게 묻힌 것 같아서 릭스랑 하면 무조건 랩을 같이 한 게 맞겠다.
I think that's really sweet. And I think it's also something that some of the members seem to do with licks on occasion. And I think I sort of talked about this. I guess it must have been the Sung Licks video, because I think that's the only other Licks one I've done. But like, he's definitely shown some confidence issues overall that I think maybe have resulted in him like really focusing his efforts on things that he is like well praised for externally, which is very, very common, right? External motivation is valuable, and especially if there is possible neurodivergence at play. For some people, external motivation is mandatory, especially if there is some type of, dopamine deficiency or something else in a... Dopamine is the motivation neurotransmitter. But if there's some other neurotransmitter deficiency of some kind, external motivation can be really mandatory for that. And so, I think that we see him really pushing in some of these places that he is like externally praised for, right? His ambassadorships, where he's the most employed man in the world, which rely a lot on visuals and his deep voice. Kind of some of the collabs that he does that are very, reliant on his deep voice. He'll still leverage some of his rap skills, but like he feels very comfortable going back to that space of like the deep voice. I think he talked about this a little bit with Rhea Waker with Lisa, was that he thought about a couple different ways he could rap, but he was like, ultimately, like, I just went back to like the deep voice. I think he probably legitimately is interested in voice acting, and I think that also there's a comfort in that. And I think what can be a little bit difficult about that for a lot of people, what would feel difficult about that is that while visuals and your voice you can hone in certain ways, certainly, there's still an extent to which what's really amazing to people doesn't always necessarily feel like something you've worked hard at. And, he has worked really hard at kind of moving his voice in different directions, right? I think he probably has gotten some help and support on like how to scream consistently a little bit, and like really like how much he can flex that voice. But I'm sure that sometimes it is hard to sort of be the face of the group in this way, because sometimes that can feel a lot less like you are one of the great artists of the team, you know? And I think that there have been a couple times that like Hyunjin has brought up like, you know, I think with Cover Me, he mentioned like, I really love Lix's singing voice. And so I wanted to give him a melody. And here Han is saying like, I actually really love Lix's rap and I wanted to give him like opportunity to show off that rap. And I think that's really lovely because I think that, you know, if that is the case where he's leaning more into things that he gets that external validation of his skill set for, then he's being given more of an opportunity to feel excited about pushing himself in these directions where he feels like other people are stronger. And sometimes what will happen is if you're on a team and you feel like all of these places are already, you know, you're already surrounded by people who are really, really super skilled in all of these places, like, well, where do I fit into that if I were to focus on growing in that area? And so I hope that he is getting that, and I'm sure he is, but like because of his team, but I hope he's getting enough of that support and validation to be excited about pushing himself in the places he wants to be excited in. And it may be that he is, right? Like, I don't know where he wants to be excited about. What I do know is that I have seen so many people, so many times, push themselves in places that they are less excited about, less passionate about, because they're so afraid of touching the thing that they are passionate about, or they're so anxious about that, or they feel this lack of confidence in that, or they feel like they can see all the ways other people are better in that. So they'll find these like sub passions that sort of give them that feeling that they're doing something valuable that maybe is in a niche that not everyone else is in, and doesn't make them have to deal with the anxiety of what it is to push themselves in something they are less confident and less comfortable in.
라는 생각이 들었고, 그래서 랩도 제 거보다 릭스 마디가 4마디 더 길어요. 왜냐면 저는 랩을 보여준 적이 너무 많고 릭스의 목소리를 좀 더
That's really sweet.
끌어올려서 보여주고 싶다라는 프로듀서 같은 마인드인가. 릭스의 이미지를 좀 더 살려주고 싶었어요. 랩에 대한
Oh,
이미지.
no. Absolutely not, honey. Maybe that's a producer mindset. Maybe. It could also be that you're a really good friend. Like, I think that could be a producer mindset for producing a band, and you are a producer for a band, right? And you are trying to produce an individual long term. But it could also just be like, you're a good friend. And maybe that's okay. That you just care about your friend.
같은 마인드인가. 릭스의 이미지를 좀 더 살려주고 싶었어요. 랩에 대한 이미지를. 역시 예상대로 랩은 너무 잘했고, 무대 위에서의 릭스는 너무 폭발적인 에너지를 갖고 있고 너무 독보적인 캐릭터고, 옆에서 거의 직관한 거니까 저는 그 에너지를 받으면서 저도 기싸움에서 하는, 그러니까 무대 위에서 둘이 있으니까 어쩔 수 없이 성격적인 기싸움이 아니고 그 얘가 뿜어져 나오는 에너지에 앉으려고 저도 막 소리를 많이 질렀던 것 같아요.
약간 이건 나을 수 있는지 모르겠지만 나 진짜 많이 생각해봤어. 와, 그러면 얼마나 힘들었을까. 이렇게 자기가 뭐 그거는 나을 줄 모르겠지만 안 하겠지. 근데 나는 그것 때문에
너무 기해 오늘.
왜? 난 진짜 이걸 깊게 생각해봤어.
알지. 근데 뭔가 너가 그렇게 생각해줬다니까 너무 고맙기도 하고, 이 진지한 얼굴로 귀엽게 조명해주니까 왜 이렇게 귀엽니 너?
너가 대단하다는 생각이 많이 들었어.
릭스가 제일 귀여워. 내 생각이나 내 개인.
It's kind of funny because sometimes Lix doesn't realize when he's being joked with. Even when it's really obvious that it's a joke. Like, you'll catch him being like, why are you laughing at me? Like, he'll have this moment of like, I'm being serious, why are you laughing at me? And it's just the other person being like, no, I legitimately think like you're taking this very seriously, and it's like a little cute or a little silly or a little like, it doesn't need to be this serious, or like I was just trying to make an extra joke. And it's
생각이 많이 들었어.
릭스가 제일 귀여운 거는 내 생각이나 내 개인의 의견을 너한테 얘기를 했어. 사소한 고민 같은 거를 릭스한테 얘기를 했어. 근데 그거에 대해서 되게 진지하게 생각해주고, 그거에 대해서 정말로 걱정을 해주는 게, 뭔가 그게 나한테 되게 요만한 걱정이었는데 너가 되게
요만한
이렇게 감싸주니까 좋은 뜻이야. 귀여운데 하찮아. 하찮다는 게 뭔 뜻인지 알지?
몰라.
뭐라고 그러지? 어쨌든 좋은 뜻이야. 이건 내가 설명하기 조금 어려워. 그런 부분이 귀엽고, 그러니까 외모가
Poor Lix just had someone be like, you know what I mean, right? And him be like, I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. And then be like, ah, shit, neither do I. Oh no.
귀엽다기보다는 너무 잘생겼지. 너무 잘생겼는데 성격이 밝으니까 그게 귀여워 보이는 것 같아.
그럴 수 있겠다.
스테이는 무조건 너를 귀여워하지. 모두 다 너를 너무
생긴 것 때문에?
내 생각엔 생긴 건 진짜 엄청 잘생긴 거거든.
아, 그래?
귀여움보다는 완전 미남 쪽 아닌가?
너무 잘 모르겠어.
릭스는 들어주는 상대가 있기만 해도 꽤 풀리는 성격인 것 같아요. 제가 봤을 때는. 그래서 그냥 들어줘요. 그랬어? 이러면서 그냥 들어줘요. 이곳저곳에서 많은 스트레스.
But you've never spent time alone together? I feel so fucked with. Like, I feel like everyone else crashing out about Minsung, this is how I feel about Jilix right now, right? Everybody else being like, are they lying to us? Are they whatever? And I'm like, no, that sounds like the truth. Whatever the fuck they were talking about with Minsung, yeah, I believe all that. You know what? I believe it. I believe they don't have a dining room table. I believe they eat separately. I believe the, like, you know what? Their relationship sounds so much like my relationship with my gothic enigma, whom I have been with for 12 years, right? If their relationship is what they say it is, it looks a lot like mine. And I've got a great relationship. I'm very happy with it. But Jilix, they're fucking with me. What the fuck are they talking about? What are they talking about?
를 받았을 테고, 그리고 사적인 얘기를 할 수 있는 공간이 많이 없을 수도 있지 않을까라는 생각을 해서 그 정도는 들어줄 수 있고, 나도 얘가 궁금하고. 그래서
I'm curious about that. Like, I'm curious about, like, why wouldn't he have places to share that? Obviously, you know, I don't really know the types of things that he's talking about. Maybe it does have to do with, like, other members. I don't know. That's interesting. But I can definitely see Hani as a good listener. You know, it's some of what I talked about in the Chansung reaction of, like, he seems like he's pretty good at certain types of mediation that require taking on some emotional labor.
들어주죠. 용복이는 내 생각에는 섬세하고 생각보다 열어 보이는데 강해, 속이. 뭔가 옛날에는 되게 열었던 것 같거든. 어른처럼 성장했다라고 느낀 거는 내적으로 뭔가 강해진 것 같아.
내 쪽?
내적으로. 뇌쪽 말고 내적.
내적으로.
마음적으로도 그렇고 굉장히 많이 단단해진 것 같아. 어디 작은 것에 대해서 멘탈이 흔들릴 때도 있었잖아.
그치. 어렸을 때 많았지.
어렸을 때 많았잖아. 근데 지금은 그런 거에도 되게 흔들리지 않고, 그런 작은 돌들쯤은 무시하고 앞으로 갈 수 있을 정도. 그리고 큰 바위가 와도 스스로 넘어설 수 있을 정도로 되게 단단해진 것 같아.
착한 건 변하지 않는데 단단하게 잘 성장한 것 같아. 역시 내 동생이야.
That's really
나도
consistent thing that people have said
몰랐어.
about him.
나도 몰랐어. 그런 거 얘기해 주니까 고맙다. 진짜. 너도 나한테 이제 많은 도움해주는 말도 많이 해주니까 그만큼 나도 좀 다시 생각해. 나의 인생에 이런 사람이 이렇게 좋은 말을 해주니까 어떻게 이거를 듣고 또 반응할 수 있을지 더 노력할 수 있는지 그런 생각을 많이 하는데 너가 멋있으니까 그게. 나는 이제 애들이랑 너를 봤을 때는 많이 밝아져. 많이 웃기고 그런 게 너무 좋아. 진짜.
감사합니다.
우리 그 어디 멀리 갔을 때 우리 캠파이어 앞에서 그 다음에 찜닭만 이제 구워서 그런 약간 어디 놀러 나가거나 그럴 때가 진짜 선샤인처럼 보이는 것 같아. 그리고 공연했을 때는 자유롭게 팬들이랑 놀았을 때는 너가 진짜 즐기고 있다는 그 모습이 너무 잘 보여서 그래서 좀 선샤인이라고 생각해.
우리가 선샤인 트윈즈라는 별명이 너가 말한 부분도 분명히 맞을 거야. 내가 제일 중요하게 생각.
I feel like Han is kind of one of those people where, like, you know, if we're gonna go with that sunshine metaphor, like, he spends time alone to charge up this battery so that he can, like, spend it all on his experiences with other people. Like, it does seem like he really, really wants to invest in the people around him and in socializing, and, like, he deeply loves people. You know, despite some of the introversion, some of the, you know, avoidant tendencies, like, he has this really, really deep love for people, and he really, really wants to bring something meaningful and special to their lives. And so, like, he just releases that, like, burst of energy that he builds up for himself. And I bet that a lot of what happened in the past was that he would burn himself out doing that. He wouldn't build up enough, and he would just keep pushing out, and it burned him out. And I hope he does not fall back into that cycle. It's not a difficult cycle to fall back into, and I hope he does not, if that is the case.
가는 거는 우리가 너무 귀여워서 그런 거 아닐까, 너랑 내가?
그치. 왜냐면
아니 뭐 멋있는 거는 다 할 수 있지만
네.
Oh, he takes things so
너는
seriously.
귀여운 거 있지.
너무 귀여워.
나 그렇게 막 귀엽지 않아. 너는 제일 귀여울 때는 밥 먹을 때.
안 먹을 때 빵빵해져가지고 그게 어렸을 때 습관이 안 고쳐졌고 진짜로.
어떻게 밥을 먹고.
아 맞다. 그리고 너는 누나랑 여동생만 있고 나는 형만 있잖아. 근데 나는 많은 사람들이 알고 있는 형제 이미지랑 많이 벗어난 느낌이야. 나랑 형은
그래?
정말 막연해서 그냥 너무 친구야. 사랑이 넘치는 것도 아니고 되게 무뚝뚝한 것도 아닌데 그냥 언제 봐도 어색하지 않고 재밌게 얘기하고 고민도 들어주고 진짜
Sounds like a reasonable adult sibling relationship. That's healthy.
엄청 많이 싸우면 그 이후로 많이 친해져.
맞아. 한 3일에 한 번씩 싸웠어. 3일에 한 번씩 진짜. 별것도 아닌 거 가지고 엄청 많이 싸웠지 어렸을 때. 형 목촉하고 그랬어 나. 목촉. 와.
나 항상 내 누나가 발차기를 하는데 무서웠어. 근데 어쨌든 싸우면 많이 싸웠지. 물어뜯고 그냥.
그치. 무기도 많이
애들끼리
들지.
그냥 싸우는 느낌이었어.
맞아.
트라우마.
I'm sorry, his eyes
애들끼리 그냥
just staring into the far distance. Oh no.
느낌이었어. 진짜.
어렸을 땐 똑같지. 진짜 형제나 남매는 다 똑같지.
그치. 근데 그만큼 진짜 많이 친해진 거 맞아. 요새 취미 뭐가 있지?
만화, 애니메이션.
Didn't you just have this conversation?
나루토 이번에 다 봤고. 다 끝났어. 지금 카구야까지 다 봤지. 다 봤어. 아예.
빠르네?
완결.
오.
다 봤지.
빠른데?
이걸로 봤지 이걸로. 난 보루토는 안 보기로 했어 그냥.
그냥 아예?
나루토가 너무 명작이니까.
What a deep and
그래서 그냥
meaningful.
나루토에서 내 좋은 추억을 마무리하자 하고 그냥. 이럴 때는 나는 말을 듣는 것도 나쁘진 않은 것 같아.
넌 잘했어.
오케이. 나 그건 해보고 싶어. 멤버들 애들 다 모아가지고 그런 거 있잖아. 그걸 뭐라 그러지? 그냥 상자에 게임 있고.
아 보드 게임.
보드 게임.
보드 게임.
Board
스컬킹
games?
같은 거 나
어,
재밌어.
I'm sorry.
했었나?
스컬킹 나도 했었는데.
뉴욕에서.
Do these nerd-ass dipshits not play board games? This is culture shock for me. This is culture shock for me. Listen, I have a degree in game design. I live in Game Development Central. I can't imagine nerds who don't play board games. I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't understand. I'm confused. I'm baffled and befuddled. I bemused. Yes, you should play board games that aren't Monopoly. I know we all watched you play Monopoly once. Terrible board game. Awful. So many better options.
그것도 재밌는데 뭐 있었는데 마피아 게임 같은 건데 뭐 마법사 있고 알지
알아.
마법사
해봤어.
있고
그거 재밌어.
그거 앞으로
맞아.
갈지 안 갈지 찬성이랑 반대내고
맞아.
그거 재밌어.
Oh, I think is that-
마피아 게임은 형태가
It's not
없이 그냥
obscura,
머리만
no.
하는
맞아.
거야.
그치.
그러니까 우리가 맨날 못하는 거야.
그치.
8명 다 똑똑할 수가 없기 때문에 근데 이제 카드 게임을 하면 형태가 있잖아. 그 심리 싸움?
아,
심리 싸움을 좀 더 할 수 있을 것 같다 해가지고 애들이랑
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just imagine the two of them trying to play Magic the Gathering. Like, I just imagine this group of boys trying to figure out how to do a Magic tournament. Oh no. Oh, that's too much chaos. It wouldn't be entertaining to watch. It'd just be confusing. Just be unfortunate. They'd end up throwing the cards at each other. They'd just make up rules. It'd stop being entertaining. Oh. Whew. Ooh.
아까 말한 것처럼 너 덕분에 어쨌든 내가 이렇게 가사에 쓰는 그 자신감도 생기고, 그러니까 너가 많은 피드백을 준 만큼도 있고, 같이 곡 작업했을 때 더 노력하려고 하는 그 그러니까 상상이 된다고 해야 되나? 너의 모습? 그러니까 너가 이 의자 앞에서 뭐 곡 작업하고 노래 부르고 그 모습이 보이니까 아 진짜 열심히 하는 거구나. 약간 진짜 너무 열심히 하고 오히려 나도 그렇게 하고 싶었어. 그래서 너를 보고 많이 뭔가 배우고 싶다라는 생각이 많이 들고, 그게 더 너한테 감사한 건 맞아. 그런 아티스트스러운 모습이 되게 많아. 야, 얼마나 무슨 노력을 필요했을까? 무슨 생각을 하고 경험을 겪어보고 했을까? 그러니까 개인 시간에 볼 수 있는 것도 아니잖아. 그냥 너의 모습이 너무 궁금해진
This
거야.
is
그럼
the,
너가
what
혼자 있을 때
they
뭐
bring
하지?
up
걱정할 때
in
무슨
some of the other
생각을 하고
2kidsrooms
무슨 마음을 갖고
between them
있을까라는 생각을
is
많이 해.
that sort of like
그래서
curiosity that they had about each other, that I think Han has a better inkling of at this point, than I think Felix does. And I think that's again just because, just based on everything he said, it does seem like Felix sort of has a hard time. Like, he really wants to get into other people's brains. He really wants to understand them. Wasn't that a question on an interview once, I think, was like, if you could have a superpower, what would it be? And his was like, understanding other people's experiences. It's always funny whenever I sort of ask people like who they think some of the most like autistic coded kids are. Felix almost never comes up, but actually to me he's up there. He's really up there actually. And I think part of that is also because like the things that he struggles with are pretty specific. In a type of way that's like, yeah, like very particular, because, you know, he does struggle to understand other people's experiences, but he doesn't struggle with like kindness and compassion. In fact, he might be a little bit of, you know, an over people pleaser, potentially. Hard to tell, right? But he just has such, he does sometimes in interviews, in conversations, struggle to figure out when somebody's kind of like joking around with him. He takes it pretty well, but he's not always quick to pick up on that. A lot of times people will say that like Felix looks out of it, or like he's having a bad time, or he's having a hard time recently, or things like that. And they've been saying this for forever, and the quote unquote reason always changes, right? It used to be, it's like, oh, well, he's trying to keep up with the Korean. He doesn't know the Korean very well, which was true for a long time. But like, then it was always like, well, why does the Felix seem so like down in this? Oh, well, he said that he gets sleepy after he's eaten, so this must have been after he ate. Or, you know, you'll see airport pictures, and I'm going to be talking in my podcast about airport pictures and like this exact topic that I'm talking about right now. But like, I think he has a little bit of a resting bitch face. And I think his particular type of resting bitch face is not one that, well, resting bitch face, I think he's just not super expressive. I think he tries to be expressive. This is something, I think it was Hyunjin maybe who brought it up for Chick Chick Boom. And he'd say that Felix would stay really, really late practicing down to the microfacial expressions that he'd make with each move. And it's like, well, I wonder how much he's, you know, I gesticulate a lot. Why do I gesticulate a lot? Because it's sort of learned. This is a really, really common type of thing where people will realize, especially someone who's an idol, who's very, very aware of the image they put off, like, will sort of realize that they need to have a more expressive face, and they'll gain a very expressive face sort of like as a compensation, or they'll work really hard on the micro expressions, right? That's part of the reason why sometimes autistic people are wonderful actors, is because it's sort of like a, when you are high camouflaging, when you are high masking, and these are two different things. And, you know, not all low support needs people are high masking or low masking or inverse or anything like that. But like, when you're somebody who is really working really hard to try to camouflage into certain roles and expectations, you learn the importance of looking certain ways. And, you know, I've often, when I've seen these interviews where like, oh, Lix looks really serious. Sometimes he does just look like he's in pain. That is true. But like, oh, Lix looks super serious, or Lix looks like he's having a bad time, or like something's wrong or something like that. Like, a lot of times I've watched it and I've gone like, or he's just not hyper managing his facial expression right now because he's not talking. Yeah, so like I actually, there's a lot of things about Lix that have read as like very coded in that way. Yeah.
막 계속 들으면서 뭐 했을까라는 생각 많이 해. 그래서 너의 음악 계속 들으면서 와, 어떻게 이런 영감을 받았지? 많이 더 너를 체크를 하는 것 같아. 근데 너 몰래 그만큼 너무 좋고 배우고 싶으니까.
고맙다.
진짜 진심으로 귀여운 쿼카인데, 이 쿼카가 지금 퀘스트 하러 가는 느낌인데, 큰 칼 들고 있고 크라운을 쓰고 있고 케이프 있고, 그러면서 자기가 정말 잘한 거 좋아하는 거.
So I think that this is the type of thing that Han is talking about, probably, with Lix having a very strong personal world. Is so like Han and Hyunjin, their imagination gets very wrapped up in like dramatizations of reality in some ways. You know, there's that like very morose, very romantic, very like capital R romantic. There's this like romantic and gothic quality to them and how they think about stories and narratives and the stories they experience and the stories, like whether they're experiencing them secondhand or firsthand. Lix has this very, like, it seems like maybe he uses a lot of metaphors, analogies, allegories to, again, understand the world around him. He's putting people and situations into contexts that he has more familiarity with. And that can seem very fantastical or like a very quick, like, imagination ramp up, when really what it is pattern seeking, right? What is a pattern that I recognize this in, that I can use to explain my experience? So, you know, I even think about, like, why would he have chosen Beauty of the Beast or Bridge to Terabithia as things to use to write songs, right? Were they mirroring an experience he was trying to understand more, whether one of his own or somebody else's, in some way, and like they helped him better understand that type of experience?
하고 싶은 것들 다 하러 간다, 이런 마음, 이런 모습이라고 보이는 것 같아요. 그래서 아직도 찾아가는 그런 과정인 것 같아요.
뭔가 계속 변형되는 구체 같은 순수함이나 착함이나 그런 본질적인 성질은 달라지지 않는데 딱딱했던 표피들이 계속 벗겨지면서 잘 정제되어 가는.
I'm sorry. That probably wasn't meant to be a Shrek reference. But you understand why it feels like a Shrek reference, right? Like that.
사람?
진짜 지금까지 많이 도움 많이 줘서 너무 고맙다고 말하고 싶어.
익수도 개인 스케줄도 많잖아. 이렇게 단지 스케줄도 잘 소화하고 그쪽에서 힘든 티 안 내고 계속 밝게 계속 있어주는 것 같아서 정말 고마워. 항상.
아, 고마워. 그렇게 말해주니까.
몰라.
힘이 난다. 항상 처음 이제 생각하는 게, 아, 진짜 멤버들한테 너무 고맙다. 그건 난 진짜 그 감사한 마음을 갖고 오히려 그게 더 힘이 나. 진짜.
그렇게 생각해줘서 고맙다.
진짜. 하닝한테 좀 더 고맙다는 마음을 잘 전달해야겠다라는 생각이 많이 드는 것 같아요. 지금도 충분히 많은 영향도 받았고 감사한 마음도 표현했지만 이 친구의 성장하는 모습을 많이 보고 옆에서 많이 잘했다라는 응원을 해주고 싶다는 마음 크게 있는 것 같아요. 그 미래를 한번 지켜보겠습니다. 셀카 찍자! 하나, 둘, 셋, 넷,
릭스보가 항상 고생이 많아. 넌 언제나 너 자신보다 팀을 먼저 챙기지. 가끔은 너를 위해 행동하고 살아보는 것도 좋다고 생각해. 앞으로도 보길 잘.
Yeah, Han's emotional intelligence has really, really become very impressive. Or maybe not emotional. I don't love the term emotional intelligence. I find that it's gotten buzzwordy and not super helpful. But his understanding of strengths-based motivation, right? Like that, thank you so much. And, right, like, you bring us so much, and also I want you to live for yourself, and I'm going to support you in living for yourself. And, like, being able to both hold the what somebody is really good at while saying, I want you to take these things that you're really good at and use them for you because I love you.
멤버 응원해. 건강하자. 한이가.
한코카, 넌 진짜 대단한 친구, 아티스트야. 어디든 넌 잘하고 많은 리스펙도 받아가면서 You are the best. 넌 남자. 꼭.
Yeah, I don't think I have any last minute thoughts. Unlike last time when I had a whole bunch of ending thoughts. You know, that was sweet. That was cute. I really do like seeing that they're growing closer together. I also am still baffled by what their definitions of things are. I think maybe they're baffled by their definitions of things. I don't know. There was a lot that happened in there that I'm not certain I like totally caught, to be honest. There was a lot of jumping around in that conversation. No, that was really cute. They're really sweet. It's nice to see them over the years growing closer in meaningful ways to each other. Especially because, like, I think they did early on communicate like how much they wanted to understand each other more, and I think it's kind of clear that like they don't always. I had a friend once who described a frequency of awkward. This was before we all recognized our various neurodivergences. Actually, I think no, it was before I realized I was autistic. Actually, I think I must have talked to her when I was like 22. And yeah, talked about how sometimes you meet people who you just have the same frequency of awkward with, and it's just like a great melding, right? The same frequency. And I feel like they're on slightly different frequencies. I feel like they've been on slightly different frequencies, and like a lot of their experiences are them trying to like figure out, because again, Han is very emotionally intuitive in that he sees people having like emotional experiences and he's sort of reactive to that, and has a pretty quick reaction to that too. That is, you know, as he's gotten older, been more and more appropriate to the situation and in more and more appropriate proportion, but he has a pretty quick emotional reactivity. Lix seems to spend a lot of his life sort of confused about the emotional state of other people. And that can be, I think Han sort of mentioned it in there. It's not necessarily like a clash. It just it's just like a confusion, because, right, it's so intuitive to me to understand your emotional state, but like what I'm understanding of your emotional state right now is that you're really confused, but I don't really know why you're really confused. Like, this seems like a pretty straightforward interaction to me, but like you seem to be spending a lot of time and effort like thinking about this interaction, and like I'm not spending that much time and effort thinking about this interaction, but like you're putting a lot into this, and is there something I'm missing from that? And then the other person is just like, I don't know what you're experiencing at all, and maybe I don't know what I'm experiencing. I'm probably not paying attention to what I'm experiencing because I'm very focused on what you're experiencing. And then that takes a little bit of... What just started playing? I don't know. I clicked something in my headphones. Oh my gosh.
Whoa.
These headphones are such a problem because you can accidentally click things. I'm just having issues with my physical environment today, apparently. Yeah, so I think it is nice to see them growing together. I just wish I understood whether they've ever spoken to each other one-on-one or not. Like, they obviously have. So I think that my theory about them being too ADHD to remember that they've hung out with each other was wrong. And I think they're just too autistic to know that they've hung out with each other, like, definitionally, because their ontology of the concept of spending time together is, like, inherently fucked somehow. What the fuck are they talking about? Fucking losers. Sometimes people will get into definitional conversations with me where they'll be like, but have we really hung out? And I'll just be like, yes. Yes. No, we're not debate. Yes. Okay. That's all that. Comments. Thank you so much. People have been leaving me the sweetest comments. Even if I don't respond, I am reading all of them. I read all of them on Threads. I read all of them on YouTube. I read all of my emails that I get. If you're leaving comments in other places, I don't know about it, but I'd read them there if you are. So they've been really, really meaningful to me for a couple of reasons. I actually have a lot of anxiety about doing these videos. I never planned on being a videoer. I always planned on sort of being a podcaster for a few reasons. But I have a lot of stress, actually, and anxiety about doing these in particular for two big reasons that the comments have really helped me with a lot, and hopefully will eventually help out y'all as well with making content better. But the first reason is that I get very anxious about one specific thing that I cannot control, and I know I cannot control it, and I don't like being anxious about it, which is, am I saying things that would make the kids unhappy, that would, like, make the members of Stray Kids unhappy? And, you know, I do my best, obviously, to, you know, not say things that I wouldn't say to somebody's face, you know, to be kind and conscientious about things, but ultimately, like, I can't know that. And ultimately, the reason I'm making these videos is not for the kids. Honestly, I don't think it would probably be, like, super helpful for them to watch these. And I don't know that I want to be perceived like that. I'm not making these for the kids. I'm making these for you, and I'm making them for me. It helps me process my thoughts and gives me the opportunity to info dump to somebody other than the gothic enigma who lives in my house, or my queer platonic life partner, or my affectionate situationship, all of whom have put up with far too much from me. And it's, you know, I really love the work I do, and I really love Stay, and I really love these boys. And so, you know, I want to make content that is the type of thing you all don't get to experience in other situations, that uses skill sets that I know I have that are helpful. And a lot of your comments remind me that, like, that's why I'm doing this, and I seem to be doing okay at that for at least some of you, which is what's important to me. I'm not somebody who's trying to be popular. I'm trying to be the right person for the right people. So that helps me not stress out as much about like, what if I'm doing something that somebody who's not really my audience wouldn't like. And the other reason is that my job is really important to me. My ethics are really important to me. My values are really important to me. My clients are really important to me. The kids are really important to me. You're all really important to me. And, you know, in my podcast, I can spend a lot of time thinking about what I'm saying to make sure it's in alignment with my like ethical values, both like my professional ethical values, but also my personal ethical values. Even to an extent, my morals, right? Here, since I'm reacting to things I'm watching for the first time, I'm not really editing. I get very worried about whether I'm meeting the standards of those values. And so reading comments both helps me know where there are places I might need to clarify or might need to do a better job, which eventually does help with like those ethical concerns, is because a lot of times certain ethical concerns comes from lack of clarity, lack of clarification, lack of open discussion, lack of transparency. So it helps me with that, like from a constructive side. And then it also, you know, helps me feel like I'm not failing those values accidentally or incidentally. You know, I do watch these once, sometimes twice through, just to like make sure the sound isn't totally fucked and, you know, whatever, pull out clips or something. But I like I said, I don't do much editing unless like something really weird happens. So, you know, that is really helpful to me. So I just really want to say thank you for that. They have been really nice to read. So thank you. They've been really, really sweet. I did not expect YouTube comments I haven't had to hide any comments. That's been lovely. You've all been lovely. Very surprising. Thank you. If you like what I do have a Supercast that technically is a subscription service that I have no idea what the additional content I will be adding for paid subscribers is, except like more updates, better updates, links to sources. Oh, I don't know. But I'm not monetized anywhere because you can't really monetize until you have, I think it's like 1,000 subscribers on YouTube and like $5,000 a month on fucking podcasts. So if you like what I do and you want to throw me a few bucks, I'd appreciate it on Supercast. You can also sign up as a free subscriber. I will be trying to collate all of my podcast episodes and all of my videos there as well. In like one place. So you can still have access to whatever I'm doing over there as a free subscriber as well. Yeah, that's it. I'm gonna go to bed because it's time for a long nap. Good night. Happy Jilix.